Welcome to episode 137 of Real Health Radio. You can find the links talked about as part of the episode at the show notes, which is www.7, so the word all spelled out, SEVEN health.com/137.
Welcome to Real Health Radio. Health advice that's more than just about how you look. And here's your host, Chris Sandel.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Real Health Radio. So I'm recording this intro in the last couple of hours that I have to work before I'm jumping on a plane and heading to Australia. So at the point you're going to be listening to this, I'll be enjoying some sunshine in Sydney. I'm going to be away for just shy of 4 weeks. So it's a nice way to finish off the year and get a bit of relaxation in. So this week on the podcast, it's another guest interview. And I'm chatting with Sarah Rzemieniak. Sarah previously worked as an eating disorder dietitian before recognizing her true passion was in the coaching and counselling aspect of the work. She then became a certified eating disorder recovery coach through Carolyn Costin Institute, where she was supervised and trained directly under Carolyn Costin, the eating disorder therapist and author and founder of Monte Nido residential treatment centers. Sarah is now an eating disorder recovery coach with the Eating Disorder Center, providing virtual recovery coaching services worldwide. She also co-leads an eating disorder support group in Victoria, BC, and has past experience serving as an eating disorder recovery mentor through MentorConnect, as well as working as a hotline staffer at the Crisis Intervention and Suicide Prevention Center of BC. Sarah has been interviewed and has written about eating disorder recovery for Psych Central Professional, Thrive Global, the Looking Glass Foundation for Eating Disorders, the Eating Disorder Recovery Speakers Podcast, and Recovered Voices. She was a featured contributing expert to the book Thrive, Expert Tips for Coping with Depression and an Eating Disorder. So I first became aware of Sarah when she started working for the Eating Disorder Center. So this is a center set up by Jennifer Rollins, who was a past guest on the show. She was in episode 108. So it was through this that I started to see the content that Sarah was putting out, and I liked what I saw, so I got her to come on the show. So as part of this episode, we chat about Sarah's story. So she developed an eating disorder at a young age and dealt with this for over a decade. And as part of this, we go through some of the things that were most crucial as part of her recovery journey. We chat about her training as a dietitian and then becoming a recovery coach and the insights that she gained from training with Carolyn Costin. And we go through some of the different books and resources that Sarah recommends for clients and personally found helpful. I've had a number of podcast episodes previously where I've talked to guests who've recovered from eating disorders. And the feedback I get from many listeners is how nice it is to hear their stories and to also hear that full recovery is possible. So with this intro out of the way, here is my conversation with Sarah Rzemieniak. Hey Sarah, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So eating disorder recovery is pretty much going to be the basis for our chat today. You are an eating disorder coach, and so I definitely want to cover how you work and all the wonderful information you can share with people from the coaching perspective. And then at the same time, you've gone through your own eating disorder, and so you can speak about recovery from your personal experience. And so I guess that's the general overview of what I'm hoping we'll cover, but I'm happy to go off on tangents and just see where the conversation does take us. Does that sound good with you?
Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds great.
To start off with, for those who are unfamiliar with you, are you able to give a bit of background on yourself? And so any different training you've done or what your day-to-day now looks like?
Yeah, definitely. So I am in Canada. I grew up in Vancouver, so the West Coast. And yeah, like you mentioned, struggled with my own eating disorder for a lot of my those years. And we can get into that after. But in terms of kind of more my background, I graduated high school in Vancouver and then moved away to university and I studied microbiology, thinking I wanted to go into medicine. And towards the end of that degree, I realized that that wasn't a good fit for my personality.
Okay.
I just knew I'd be a total workaholic and couldn't leave it at work. So I took a bit of time off, and I actually I saw that you did your nutrition training like through a naturopathic
Yes.
school, which is really interesting because I was torn between doing a naturopathic medicine training or dietetics, and I ended up choosing dietetics. It just was a bit shorter for me because I had the science background, and I just was kind of scared of the entrepreneurial aspect of becoming a naturopathic doctor. Whereas in Canada, with the public healthcare system, dietitians have pretty stable careers. So I did that at the University of British Columbia, and I worked as a dietitian for about 3 years, and 2 of those years were with eating disorders in the outpatient setting, and along with other clinical, like nutrition concerns for people. And then we can talk about how I transitioned into coaching, but I ended up taking Carolyn Costin's eating disorder coach training program and deciding to try that out. So I deregistered as a dietitian and just focusing on the coaching now. And so that was my main training. I did a lot of like motivational interviewing and counseling for behavior change. A lot of those trainings when I was an outpatient dietitian, because there is so much behavior change, and working as a dietitian too. But I really loved that aspect of the work, and I realized that my passion was less in the meal planning and less about the food, even though, of course, working with eating disorders, it is always about the food, but I just wanted to explore kind of a different approach to working in the field. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Cool. And it's that second part in terms of you being a dietitian and then you becoming a coach is definitely something I want to dig into. But let's go back a little bit to your story. So I guess what was food growing up like for you?
Yeah, you know what? It's so funny. Like when I read about a lot of everyone's perfect storm of how they develop an eating disorder is so different, but a lot of the ones I think that people like the kind of the stereotypical or the risk factors that people assume are there weren't there for me. So my household had a great relationship with food. My mom's, she's a little bit into like, kind of the healthy, hippie kind of eating. She's kind of alternative in health and stuff, but zero focus on calories or a scale in the home. She never worried about calories or dieting herself. So I loved food when I was little. She was a great cook. They were vegetarian, but so there's always really creative, like ethnic meals. And I remember loving food until I developed the eating disorder. So I even loved my body. There was no body image dissatisfaction before the eating disorder set in. So food was good when I was little. I wasn't an overly picky eater. I genuinely loved food in a very normal kind of way. Yeah.
And so then how did the eating disorder start and when did that start?
Yeah. So it started, it seems pretty young to me, but I know it's not that young. There are kids really young developing it now, but I was 12 when it started, and it started pretty quickly. It wasn't really like a kind of a diet that lasted and then kind of went too far, but it was kind of pretty full blown. So I was always a really anxious kid. As much as I don't have like a lot of the environmental risk factors for an eating disorder in terms of like dieting and body image and anything like that, the temperament was really there. So very anxious, perfectionistic child, a lot of attachment anxiety with my mom, just having a really hard time being separated from her. So her and my dad went traveling for the first time, like together at the same time. They left for 2 weeks and left us with some family friends. And that was a huge anxiety provoking thing for me. But I think that was kind of like the final straw, because amidst all that, I'd been struggling in school, like socially, not not really, but subjectively to me, it felt like I was. I'd always really depended on feeling really like the most popular kid in my class in order to, I just needed a lot of external validation. I needed to, my teachers to be pleased with all my work. And even though we didn't even get marks back then, I would redo assignments until they were, flawless or just very anxious. And then all of a sudden I felt like, I just didn't feel like the most popular kid anymore. And it wasn't, I still had friends. There was no bullying or anything, but I just remember coming home and feeling like devastated, like just no self-worth if I wasn't chosen first for things. And I'd also always been really worried about money from a young age. I think I'd seen like a Disney movie or something where poverty was depicted, or I don't know. I developed this fear of being poor. And for the first time we had moved and my parents had a mortgage. We hadn't had a mortgage before. So all of a sudden they were kind of like talking about money. Maybe they shouldn't have in front of us so much, but I'm like, oh my God, we're going to be poor. And like, I just remember being so anxious. And then they left traveling, and I was trying to think back on like how the idea of an eating disorder was even in my consciousness, because I'd never had any concerns about my body image. None of my friends did. So, but I remember that there was like this People magazine in the waiting room of somewhere when I was probably like 11 or so, right before it started. And it was like a feature on these twin women who were very, very sick with anorexia. And I remember reading it, and that must have been the first time I'd ever been exposed to the idea of an eating disorder. Okay. And of course, like People magazine, they weren't trying to glamorize it. I think it was just an expose kind of piece. But I think the way our culture and how like magazines like that can kind of sensationalize things. Yeah. I think I must have picked up on something. Like, as horrified as the journalists would have been, there probably also was a little bit of that kind of awe about what these women could do to themselves. And I think it just fit something about my temperament of always wanting to like just the perfectionism and being disciplined or wanting to be special in some way. Something clicked, but it didn't happen right away. I read it and then kind of forgot about it, I think, because the eating disorder didn't set in until my parents were gone. But for some reason, I just turned to exercising in my room by myself, proving to myself that I could be more disciplined than my peers, and eating less than I knew my friends were. And I just all of a sudden felt like I had this new way of feeling in control and good about myself that wasn't dependent on like anyone else's perceptions of me. Like I could kind of control the rules now, when it felt like all my old rules were kind of falling apart or like out of my control. So it set in really fast. Like I just kind of, every day I had to eat less than the day before, and I was exercising more and more. And it was always about like not being lazy. I had to be more disciplined than the day before. Like if I couldn't push myself more than the day before, I was like lazy. And so it spiraled really fast. And by the time my parents got back, I'd already lost a lot of weight. And I think the family friend had contacted them that she was really worried about me. So they were coming back pretty soon after that anyway. But they rushed me to a doctor, and I got into treatment pretty quickly. Yeah, so it set in pretty quickly.
You said you were rushed in to see doctors. So just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so they must have I think they took me we had a family doctor, so they took me there first, and right away he referred us to a pediatrician. And so I don't know how specialized he was in eating disorders, but he knew too. Anyways, he referred me to the local hospital. So I remember just ending up on like a pediatric inpatient floor, not specialized in eating disorders, but just because they were worried about my heart rate and just medical stability. So I think within probably a couple weeks, I was on the like pediatric floor, and I had a dietitian there who was lovely, and did seem quite aware of the eating disorder. So she was very gentle with me. Like she was just coaxing me to eat more than I had been, but she let my mom bring in, I already had all these food rules, very orthorexic, like very particular foods I'd let myself eat. So I think she just knew she couldn't push me too much all at once. So my mom would bring in my food to the hospital, but, they got me into the specialized, eating disorder treatment center, like the Children's Hospital in Vancouver. But it was just a day program. I think because I was medically stable, by that point, because I'd been in my local hospital, I didn't need the inpatient bed. And I just found the day treatment wasn't enough for me. Like I couldn't cope on the weekends by myself or the evenings. Like I felt like I had to compensate for everything I'd done in the treatment program. So it was just too much for my parents to deal with. So I actually went out of province and ended up doing inpatient for 2 summers in Alberta, the province next to me. So I got lucky there because that program I could be there like more around the clock. And it was a good program that helped me a lot. Yeah. So that was kind of the journey there.
And did you instantly recognize it was a problem? Because I know for a lot of people with eating disorders, it can take a really long time for them to recognize it as an issue, or at least admit it to others. Like, how did you think about it when your parents came back and then you're being shuttled off to different doctors? What was your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Cause I think it's, I like sharing that part of it because I know this isn't true, that it's, once someone recognizes it's a problem, that it's, all of a sudden you're on this linear recovery path. But sometimes I felt like, sometimes I would read people's stories and it would kind of seem like they had this really long period of denial with the eating disorder. And then once they decided they wanted to recover, that was kind of a turning point for them. And for me, it didn't feel like that at all, because as soon as my parents got back, I basically was like begging them to help me. I'm like, this is really out of control. And I'm hungry and tired, but my mind is like out of control right now. And I want to eat more, but I can't. And it was also new to me. Like it had set in so fast. So I was kind of like scared by what was going on, I think. So I knew it was a problem right away and I wanted help, but then it was still like over 10 years until I felt, recovered. So even though like from the get-go, I knew it was a problem, I knew I needed help, it took a really long time to be able to let it go and like find other ways of coping after I found it. Yeah.
And you said you then did sort of 2 summers of recovery at an inpatient place, but you then also mentioned that it took 10 years to get past it. So what other recovery, what other treatments were you doing then over that time?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I went for like the summer and then they wanted me to stay because I hadn't really fully even weight restored, and I could have stayed a lot longer, but I convinced them to discharge me so I could start school on time because I really wanted to like fit in with my new high school. And so they let me go back home. And then so I slowly relapsed over that first year back. So I had to go back for next summer. Again, I probably should have stayed longer, but I convinced them that I needed to get back to start school with everyone else. So I think that was part of why I needed to go back, and maybe why recovery took so much longer after that. But after that point, I never relapsed so bad that I needed to go back to inpatient. But after that, I just worked with outpatient therapists and not even a dietitian, which looking back, I think that might have speeded it up for me a bit to have someone kind of pushing the food behaviors a little bit more. But I just worked with either like a child psychiatrist or a therapist on an outpatient basis after that, different ones. Yeah, but no more formal like programs.
And you mentioned about wanting to rush back to school and fit in with friends. I mean, was this something you were able to then talk about, or this was a secret that you never really opened up to friends about?
I never fully opened up about it, but I also couldn't hide my behaviors. So luckily, I just had a very gracious group of friends, and they all knew I ate weird and wasn't as relaxed as they were with like exercise and stuff, but no one confronted me about it. They just kind of accepted. I think they knew what was going on. And like now I'm still friends with them, and they knew what was going on. They just could tell I didn't want to talk about it, and they didn't push it. So I didn't try to hide it and pretend I didn't have it, but I didn't like confide in them either. So it's kind of, they were very accepting and non-judgmental looking back.
And so at what age then did you finally get to recovered, or where you're like, okay, I'm getting to this place of recovery, or getting to the place where I don't feel like this is an issue for me anymore?
Yeah. So I was really determined to kind of I felt like the eating disorder kind of took over my whole teenage years and kind of defined me. Like in high school, basically I was still underweight and weird with exercise, and basically everyone knew there was something going on. And I felt I just wanted a fresh start. So I really pushed myself in grade 12 to like fully weight restore, and get a lot of the eating and exercise under control. And I worked with a child psychiatrist, and he was really great. And so I moved away to university and felt like I was in a really good place. I was still rigid in certain ways, but no one knew I could pass as normal, which was what I wanted. So the symptoms were pretty good then, but I was so uncomfortable in my body. I didn't really work through that very well. And I just kind of white knuckled it. Like I didn't let myself engage in restricting or anything that I knew would lower my weight, but I was not doing well mentally with it. And then, so in the summer between second and third year, a bunch of my roommates were going on diets for the summer. And I kind of thinking like, well, if they're allowed to lose weight to feel more comfortable in their bodies, why can't I just lose a little bit? Like, I'm not going to relapse. I know what I'm doing. I don't want to go back there, but there's got to be a middle ground, because I just felt so bad at that weight. So I started dieting a little bit with my roommates, and it quickly turned into a relapse. So that was in university. So it was after that relapse that I started like really realizing how much deeper I needed to go with the recovery work, like really looking at my relationship with myself, not just white knuckling it and not doing symptoms, but really like, how do I accept myself on a deeper level so that I can be at a healthy weight and be at peace with it? And like, what's that going to take? So over the next, so that would have been in like 2007. So then I consider when I really felt like, wow, this is really out of my life and I'm in a, really good place with food and my body and exercise. That was probably about 2012, 2013, right when I was kind of finishing up, in the middle of the dietetics program even. So, So it was, about, I think of it as like 25, 26 when I felt like in a really good place for the first time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know on your site there's loads of resources in terms of different books, both around eating disorders and also around spirituality and self-help. So when did you get into that place where you were, I imagine, trying to read that stuff to help? Was that in terms of part of your recovery, or that's been more subsequent as you've gone on and done the coaching stuff?
No, that was totally my thing, and something that wasn't really brought into my treatment program at all. But my parents have always done this meditation practice from before I was born. So we grew up with it. And when I was in the hospital as a 12-year-old, my mom would read me. I would ask her to. She didn't push it on us, but I really found them comforting. I don't even know what I comprehended at that age, but I would ask her to read me books from the spiritual practice they did. And it was always something that just, I think growing up with it just felt very like natural to me. And then I didn't start meditating until I was in my 20s. But after that relapse and kind of realizing like, this isn't just about white knuckling it through symptoms, but this is really about healing my relationship with myself, like working on self-acceptance and self-compassion at like a much deeper level, not just transferring it to needing to get perfect grades or, you know, some other thing that I would often do because the perfectionism was such a part of my temperament, but like realizing that was kind of where the work was. That's when I really, I did read Jenny Schaefer's books and intuitive eating and found those really helpful. But more than anything, I didn't read necessarily recovery books, but I started reading like Tara Brach, Pema Chodron, like different, more like spiritual Buddhist type books. Yeah, that really looked at like a way of relating to yourself on a deeper level. And I found that really, really healing. That was the biggest thing for me that I feel like really helped me fully recover. So I'm not just white knuckling through not using behaviors anymore. Yeah.
And you talked earlier about maybe when you were younger, if you'd had a dietitian, that would have been more helpful. I mean, are there other things that you wish could have been different as part of your recovery? And this could also be things like, I don't know, I wish my parents or my friends had done this differently if they'd only known better, or that this therapist or this inpatient facility had done this differently if only they'd known better.
Yeah. Overall, I'm really grateful to how my parents and friends handled it. They weren't directly like supportive, but they really didn't give me a hard time about it. They kind of they didn't make me feel bad about it, or they didn't show a lot of frustration with me. But they also took me to treatment. I think my mom and dad just knew it was over their heads. Yeah. So they just wanted to get me professional help. But I always felt really understood by them. Like there was never that, why can't you just eat? They really understood like how deeply like and psychological the battle was for me. So I always felt very comfortable around them, like that they were upset about it, but not, they kind of understood on some level. So nothing there. If anything, I mean, maybe it would have been a quicker journey if I'd stuck it out in the inpatient treatments from the get-go a bit longer. That might have been good. Maybe working with a dietitian, because I kind of I didn't challenge. I was very, very slow to challenge my food rules and anything like that, because no one was really making me. So I kind of just waited for my own motivation to kick in, which took a long time. But maybe if someone else had been kind of pushing me a little bit more, that could have been okay too. Body image was never addressed that much, and that might have helped me not relapse. If that was on me, I could have reached out probably to a therapist to really help me work on that, so I didn't relapse in university. But it's so hard to say, because I kind of feel at peace with how it went. It could have been faster, but then maybe it was just, that was the pace that I needed to go at. And anytime I did take steps forward, it was all from internal motivation. So it's hard to say if someone else had been guiding it a bit more, maybe it would have been smoother or faster. But but no huge misses on anyone's part. Or I was really happy with all the treatment I got. It was a great program in Edmonton. And nothing huge that I look back on and wish was different.
And at the bottom of every one of your blog posts, you have journaling prompts. So was journaling a big part of the recovery for you?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I journaled. Oh God. Yeah, I kept a journal since the age of 10 and just, filled journals in the hospital. And it's neat, reading Carolyn's work now and doing the coach training, because I'd never been introduced to the concept of the eating disorder self and the healthy self during my own recovery. But looking back, that was really what was going on for me. I was really aware that there was this really scared part of my brain that needed me to be perfect, needed me to follow all these rules in order to feel okay about myself. But then I was also aware, I called it my heart, because the meditation my parents did was it's a heart-centered meditation. So they kind of focus on the heart and believe that the heart has a lot of significance in terms of the soul. just, from like a spiritual perspective. So I was always very comfortable with that concept. So it became this thing for me of like my fearful head versus like this other part of me that felt like, kind of my heart. And it was very accepting and loving. And when I read spirituality books, that was a part of me that like was really, yes, this is true. Like part of me knows all of this is true. But then there's this other part of me that is terrified and can't like let go. So the journaling was really a way for me to like connect with that deeper part of myself and to almost give myself like pep talks in my journal. But all of the journaling, like no matter what I was going through, I was always journaling from that like kind of wise part of myself. Or I would write out like all of my fears and anxieties from being in treatment, but then it would always end from this really wise part of myself coming forward through the writing that would, that just was able to get stronger. Like Carolyn Costin does in her work about strengthening that part of the self. So yeah, journaling was a huge comfort. And I still use it a lot.
Yeah. And it was, when I was going through your blog and seeing that, journaling is a huge thing that I use with clients. And I think it's probably the thing that gets the biggest results for people. Because, the way that I do it is I'll get them to do journaling and then we can have a conversation about it. Have a look at, okay, what are someone's beliefs? Where is there maybe some cognitive dissonance here? And just sort of, see if you can poke holes in certain things or see how things may be supporting you or not supporting you. But there's something about having that time and that space to start to open up and do free writing, can tap into emotions that people don't necessarily know are there or thoughts that they don't necessarily know is there. So I find that you get a lot more out of that than just talking to someone.
Yeah, it is amazing how, exactly. You can get clarity on things and put voice to things that might just be lost kind of if you're trying to just do it in your head. So yeah, totally. I agree. I love using it with clients now. Mm-hmm.
And so when you mentioned at the beginning that you originally started out in one field of medicine, then transferred into dietetics. So what kind of prompted that change into being a dietitian? All throughout my first degree, I really thought I was going to be a doctor. And I think I took a nutrition course as an elective during that degree, but I kind of thought it was too limited. I'm like, I want to be a doctor and like have this huge scope kind of and this depth of knowledge. But then as I really worked on, like after the relapse, really kind of exploring my relationship with myself, I realized how much I needed to address the perfectionism and how I just didn't think medicine would be the right sphere for me to be able to do that. So, I always knew I wanted to work with people going through hard times. I think going through my own journey, I found like I volunteered on crisis phone lines during university and a sexual assault support center. And I was always drawn to I felt like I had this empathy and compassion for other people's struggles because I could relate so much. So I just loved doing that for volunteer work. So I always knew I never considered like business or law or any other type of profession. I always knew I wanted to work with people, and especially to help them go through things. I wanted to become a therapist. As soon as I decided I didn't want to do medicine, I wanted to be a psychologist, but I would have had to redo basically my whole undergrad, and I just didn't feel ready to do that. Like I was just finishing. So to me, being a dietitian felt like a good stepping stone. And I think looking back, it never was that I was really passionate about food or meal plans itself. It just felt like a logical way of applying my microbiology degree to something that would give me a really solid career in healthcare. And from there, kind of figure out what I wanted to do. And I think I always knew, I'm like, well, 5 years in, I can go back, get a master's in counseling. I knew some dietitians who had both. They were therapists and dietitians, and I thought that would be really neat. So yeah, it was very, I kind of just wanted to see where it would go, but it felt like a good
step to take. And I knew the credibility of the profession would help me in even if I decided to do something else. So I think I kind of went in with a very open mind, and it was just 2 more years of schooling for me and then an internship in like hospitals. So it wasn't like a whole grad degree or anything. So it felt a little bit more doable. So yeah, I think I kind of went in not sure what I was going to do with it, but it felt like a good step.
And when you said not sure what you're going to do with it, was there the intention always, I want to work in the eating disorder space, or it was more just general as being a dietitian to start with?
Yeah, I think I thought that I knew that might be a possibility because I knew I wanted to work with people as close to the mental health realm as I could. I knew I didn't want to be like an ICU dietitian or doing the really clinical side of it. So I did an elective. We had a couple electives we could choose. So I did 1 week at an eating disorder treatment centers. So I knew I was like interested in it, but then I also knew there was a chance that maybe in my own recovery, I wouldn't want to be surrounded by eating disorders still. So I think I was open to maybe finding it like a good fit, but also not. I was also interested in maybe working with like substance use or just intuitive eating. So I think I wanted something where I felt like I could work with people in a little bit more of a counseling role, but not necessarily eating disorders. But then the position opened up, and that was the closest to being able to do the counseling piece, the role I took, which had the element of eating disorders in it. So it was a little bit by chance that I ended up in that role, but I loved just the counseling aspect of being able to be an outpatient dietitian versus like in the hospitals.
And was there any worry, and this could have been worry from you or worry from your parents about, given your history and from what you're talking about before in terms of your actual recovery journey and still struggling with an eating disorder? I think at the time you started to be a dietitian, that maybe being a dietitian wasn't the best place for you to be going in terms of it could be triggering with your own eating issues.
Yeah, I know. Looking back, yeah, I'm surprised they weren't worried, but yeah. And I remember when we first started out in our classes, I can't remember if it was addressed directly with our professors or if I read about it, but how eating disorder rates can increase, like how a lot of people have their own eating, like a lot of eating disorders, like as a background will find themselves in the nutrition field, or the focus and all the knowledge about what is healthy eating and, all of that can trigger even like disordered eating in someone. So I was very aware of that and like very interested in how that would affect me. And I found it didn't. Like, I think the work I had done, I was really, really done with it, and nothing seemed to be able to trigger me. So I would have, if it had been, but for some reason, I think I'd had friends who, like from the treatment, who had been in touch with, who were still struggling, never felt triggered by them. So for some reason, I felt very confident going into the field that it would be okay. And at that point, I still had some of the thoughts. My body image was still a little tenuous, but I found my recovery continued until I felt fully recovered, like maybe like a year into the program. And then with the eating disorder clients, during internship where we get to be in the hospital, that was when I wanted a bit of exposure to it to kind of see what that would be like for me.
Yeah.
Like, would it be triggering? Would clients not resonate with me? Because maybe, they would, it just wouldn't be a good fit. So anytime there was like an inpatient eating disorder admission on the medical ward, I would kind of see if I could help out a bit with it. And, I didn't feel triggered at all. And there were some really sick clients who were, really not able to eat, or really a lot of body image, like distortion, body image. And I found just so much empathy and compassion for like what they were going through. And I didn't feel, if anything, it just made me really grateful that I wasn't in that place anymore. And then I did the week in the treatment center as an elective, and same thing. I just felt really grateful. I'm like, whoa, I'm now on this side of this side of the desk. It's really weird, but no, it wasn't triggering. But yeah, it could have been. For some reason, I just had this conviction that it wouldn't be. I don't know. Yeah. So it never was. Yeah, it never was.
And so with, you were mentioning there about, as part of that, you were then working with eating disorder clients. Were you at that stage as a dietitian, were you then opening up to them about your own history where appropriate?
Yeah, where appropriate. And I didn't have a lot of guidance around that because my supervisor wasn't eating disorder trained or anything. But I just knew from what I'd heard from friends who were therapists that there was a place for self-disclosure if it was done in the right way and not making the session about me. And I knew I wouldn't disclose with everyone, like if I felt like it wouldn't be helpful for them. But there were a few, especially like I had some young teens and their parents, and to the parents, well, with the kid there too, but I would self-disclose, and because a lot of the parents seem to think, oh my God, my kid has, she might never recover. Is this going to be something we deal with for our whole lives? So I would self-disclose. And then there were a few clients I had who were my age, and I self-disclosed to them, just letting them know, like, I got how hard it was, what they were doing. And they came back and told me that was the most helpful part of our work together, just because they'd never met someone who got it really. Yeah, but I tried to really go with like my intuition on it, like really feel out the client. And is this going to be helpful or comforting for them? And
sure.
Then to do it in a very sensitive way. But it was rewarding because it was neat to see their reaction and like for them to feel so understood.
And so you then transitioned out of being a dietitian, and on your site you said you realized that it was the coaching aspect of the dietetics work that I love the most and wanted to focus all my attention on. So for many people listening, they might not know or understand what the difference is between being a dietitian versus being a coach. So what is that difference?
Yeah, because being able to take the motivational interviewing courses and the counseling for behavior change, I realized there was so much that an outpatient dietitian working with eating disorders can do that is psychological and behavior change. But I think I just wanted to be as close to a therapist as I could be without being a therapist. And I just wasn't passionate enough about the meal planning and the food and the medical monitoring, like all the liaising I was doing with the physicians. And I felt like that's where a lot of my time was going. Like some of my more stable clients, we weren't talking so much directly about the meal plan. And I really loved those sessions where they were in a pretty stable place. But for a lot of the clients who were really sick, it became very much about the meal plan and, of course, coaching them through that. But when I found out about Carolyn's course and how it was, of course, I'd still be talking about the food, but it just felt like it was opening up this kind of new space for how I could work with people. I was very happy to give up the kind of the nutrition piece in the sense of being like a nutrition professional who kind of had to focus on it in that way. So yeah. And I think it was also that position I was in because it wasn't just eating disorders. So I didn't have enough time sometimes with people as I would have wanted. It was a really busy position. And I often felt like I wish I just had like longer sessions with people. And so just, I guess in a nutshell, like I think there's a huge coaching aspect to the dietitian work, but I was just happy to be able to like not feel irresponsible if I did spend a session like just talking, like looking at the thoughts, looking at like what's going on, and kind of not always just focusing on the food, even though it's still a part of the work. But yeah, does that kind of
no, it definitely it does.
Answer? Yeah, there's a lot of crossover, but yeah.
And you mentioned Carolyn twice. A number of times, and I still need to have her on the show. And I've had a previous guest, Laura Hearn, talk about her experience of going to Monte Nido for recovery. And Monte Nido is the name of the treatment centers that Carolyn set up. And so I'd love to hear from you about your experience of doing the certification?
Yeah. So it felt like really good timing because in that dietitian career, I just went on leave from that position and went traveling. And it was while I was traveling that I got sent this newsletter that mentioned it. And I'd never read Carolyn's books before. I knew of her work because the 8 Keys book was used in the treatment centers near me. Like it was kind of like a staple book they all read. So I knew she was well respected in my area. But yeah, so it felt like a big financial investment for me because I was traveling but I just got a really good vibe from it. And I think even at that point, I didn't know that much about her, but just from what I kind of gleaned from the coaching website, I'm like, oh, it sounds really neat. So yeah, but as I got into it and then read her books as part of the training, I just really loved her philosophy. It was the first time I'd heard of an eating disorder professional use words like soul and ego and like spirituality. That was never part of my treatment, even though it was what I put together for myself that really helped me. So that was something just her philosophies on it and her understanding of it, I just really resonated with. So yeah, I loved the training, and it was neat being able to kind of have like a lot of my own beliefs about like the need for like really repairing like the deep relationship with yourself and finding whatever your definition of spirituality might be or whatever someone wants to call it, just the importance of bringing that kind of like soulfulness or, mindfulness to daily life. And she just made that such a part of her approach. So I really resonated with her approach. And yeah, the training was good. It took me I worked through it for like a year as I traveled. It was there was a lot of material there. And she reads over our assignments herself and gives great feedback, and then listened to my recordings of my practice client and gave really good feedback. So it was neat getting to work so closely with her. I wasn't expecting that from it. Cool. It was really good. It felt like I came out of it feeling confident, in being able to switch from the dietitian role to being able to do coaching. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it doesn't sound like it was just a piece of paper. You got a lot of skills from that would help you as a coach.
Yeah, it was more in depth than I thought it would be. Tons of written assignments and readings and videos, and it was quite involved. It was, yeah.
And so I know you touched on a couple of ideas there. I mean, is there anything else that you would say has been most helpful for you as a coach as part of that training?
Yeah, well, I liked how I felt like it was a really good balance of kind of the clinical skills, I guess. Well, not quite clinical, it's not therapist, but ideas for how to work with clients and assignment ideas and more the theoretical stuff. And then the coaching stance, the relational aspect of it. And I thought she did a really good job of addressing both, because I think that was kind of a concern of mine. Okay, I'm going to have all these tools, but you still have to know how to be in relationship with someone as their coach. But then you don't want to just have the soft skills. You also want kind of ideas for how to really move someone along and work with them. So I thought she did a really good job of addressing both of those aspects of the work. And I think all of the written assignments were a really good way of being able to kind of run by her, okay, this is what I would do in that situation. And then she gives feedback. So I think, the training felt like it was a really thorough basis for the work.
And so then you mentioned you were traveling as part of that training. And so I imagine you then get back, and then how do you go about setting yourself up as a coach?
Right. Yeah. So Jennifer Rowland and I had been friends for quite a few years. And we met online and just talked on the phone tons over the years. And we'd always kind of talked about working together because I was a dietitian at the time and she was just starting out in private practice, and just had very similar philosophies on the work and passion for the field. So we'd always kind of talked about how neat it would be to work together one day. But then, I'd considered doing it on my own. I kind of liked the idea of being an entrepreneur and having my own kind of thing. But it just, for starting out, it felt really good to like work with someone. And and we'd always just wanted to work together too. So it worked out really well. I got back in June from traveling. And so we've just been working together now for like 2.5 months. So it's all quite new.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I know with your sessions, you often have a lot of sessions or have sessions where you go grocery shopping with people or you'll go and have a meal with them. And I know this is probably a bit different to people's automatic thoughts about what a coaching session might involve. I mean, were these kind of sessions part of your recovery?
No, they weren't. And I mean, the thing is right now, all my clients right now are virtual. So I haven't been able to do a lot of that stuff, which was a big part of Carolyn's training, really kind of like the AA sponsor model almost, where like I would be going to restaurants with people, clothing shopping, and with clients in person, I would totally do that. But with all my clients being virtual right now, it's a little bit different. Even though I could totally do a session with them on the phone in the grocery store, it just hasn't been relevant yet. But I'll do meals with clients like over video. And so we'll eat together, and lots of like texting and email support in between sessions. So there's that like out of session kind of practical piece to it. But yeah, it'd be neat to have a client in person where I get to like do that and go out with them, which would be really cool. But no, that wasn't a part of my recovery at all. And I think that would have been really helpful. The dietitian did take us out for like desserts and things in treatment, which was really helpful. But yeah, when I explain it to potential clients, and they have a therapist and a dietitian, and the therapist and dietitian want that for them as well, just that added piece of support and like someone who can be with them in the moment between sessions. And yeah, I think that would have really helped me if I had that.
And for someone who maybe doesn't quite get it, what would be the benefits of being able to sit down or to have that meal, even if it's just via Skype?
Yeah, well, just being able to help them with a challenge that they probably wouldn't be able to do on their own. So like I'll spend half or a full session before a meal support session, like planning it with them. So, you know what, because you'll have me as the support there, how could you push yourself like in a meaningful, not like challenging, but not overwhelming way that you couldn't do on your own? So kind of like the exposure and response prevention type work, we're just kind of like supporting them actually doing new behaviors. Because I know from my experience how motivated you can be in a session with a therapist or dietitian, and you'll have all this insight, but still when it comes to like being able to put new goals into practice, it's so hard. So that's where like doing it with them in person just helps with that goal setting. Like they just have a bit of accountability there, and then just someone to check in with, something to help them strengthen that healthy part of them going through it, like just kind of coaching them through the meal. Because I think so much of the eating disorder recovery work is just rewiring the brain, like realizing that these terrifying behaviors that you haven't been able to get yourself to do, with a bit of coaching through it, you can do it. And all of a sudden your comfort zone kind of starts expanding, and yeah, the brain pathways kind of start shifting and kind of loosening up a bit just by doing things in person and like actually doing them. So yeah, I think just having someone to walk them through it and follow up with them by text and email after, so they can feel supported like through the whole experience. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. And this is something I've done with clients as well. And I think it could have even been Jennifer Rowland who I first saw doing it, and then kind of picked up on that and thought that was a really good idea. Because I still need to read Carolyn's book, so I know of her in the field, but she's someone who I haven't actually read. I've listened to on numerous podcasts, but yeah, it is a really good idea, and it's really helpful with clients to be able to have that meal and be having a conversation while it's going on, and try and make it as unthreatening as possible, while they're able to eat something that ordinarily would be a real struggle.
Yeah, totally. totally. Yeah. Trying to bring a little bit of like the support they might get in a treatment center with like the supported meals. Cause I know for myself, like I had to eat things in treatment that I never would have been able to on my own. So for someone in outpatient too, just, having someone there to kind of hold them a bit accountable, but also like believe in them and challenge them a bit. And it's huge. That's neat that you're doing it with clients. That's awesome. Yeah.
So the final thing I want to ask, I know I made reference earlier on to the long list of different books and resources that you have on your site. If you were to point someone towards, 2 or 3 books that you think would be most helpful, and I know I'm asking a really big general thing here, but 2 or 3 books that you found most helpful as part of recovery, what would you suggest?
Oh, I know. I had so many on there because I just read so many books when I was going through it. Guess depends. Are you thinking more like eating disorder recovery books or more like the spirituality books?
It could be either. And look, part of the reason I'm asking this is when I listen to podcasts and people make book recommendations, I will typically jot them down, add it to an Amazon list, and at some point I will then try and read that book. I mean, I've got a crazy amount of books I'm trying to get through, but I always find it helpful to hear what other people have read, what other people have found helpful. So that's why I wanted to find out from you, because I think it could be useful for people who are listening.
Yeah, totally. Well, maybe I'll give you a couple from each category.
Okay, yeah, do that.
Okay. For the eating disorder recovery ones, I found Jenny Schaefer's books really good, like The Life Without Ed and Goodbye Ed, Hello Me. They're one of the few I read by someone who went through their own recovery journey that weren't like too triggering, not triggering at all. They were really well done. So I found those really helped me, like hearing about her struggles and that she got through it just for seeing that someone could do it. So those were huge. Now I recommend Carolyn, like the 8 Keys to Recovery book to everyone, but I didn't read that when I was recovering. So, but that's one I do recommend to everyone now. And then I think so those are the main ones that jump out at me for the eating disorder recovery ones. If I'm just thinking of a few, Eating in the Light of the Moon was really good, and Intuitive Eating was really good too. I often recommend those as well. And then for the spirituality books, the ones I recommend to people often, or that really helped me, but that I know like aren't too out there and that everyone really resonates with, are like the Self-Compassion book by Kristen Neff. It's not totally spiritual, but just really looking at that relationship with yourself. I love that book. I love Tara Brach's book, like Radical Acceptance and True Refuge. I found those really helpful. Really loved this book called Dying to Be Me. And it's by this woman, Anita Moorjani. And it's definitely a bit more out there and a bit more spiritual than maybe some people might be familiar with, because she talks about like this near-death experience and kind of being out of her body and coming back. But it just really resonated with me because she still was examining like how she'd been living her life so full of fear. And then she had all these really beautiful insights when she was like in what she calls the other realm. But I found that book really, really comforting and like quite beautiful. So I really loved that one. And then I'll give you one more. Heart math is something that I found really helpful throughout my recovery. And it's not necessarily spiritual again, but it looks at like the connection between the heart and the brain and like different exercises you can do to tune into your heart, but almost from like a physiological perspective. But like they're very into research around like how the heart has neurons and how it has its own like immune system, and like just how the heart is so much more than a pump. And they have different techniques for like calming your mind by like connecting to your heart. And I actually asked Carolyn about it, and she said that she actually used some of their things at Monte Nido, and I didn't know that. So apparently it's kind of an accepted thing. So that's heart math. Okay,
cool. Well, look, I will put a link to all of the or to the page with all the resources on, so people can go and have a look at them. But yeah, I think it's helpful to get some book recommendations. And just in terms of the reference you made in terms of Dying to Be Me, it made me think of, as part of Sam Harris's new Waking Up app, he has a meditation on death, which is phenomenal, which I've listened to multiple times, and it just really starts to make you rethink about how your life really is, and just how short a time we really have in this world, and the things that we really get upset about and angry about, how much they really don't matter in the whole scheme of things. So I think something along those lines can be really helpful. The same with Man's Search for Meaning is another book in that kind of realm.
I love that book too. Yeah, I love that one. That's neat. I keep hearing about Sam Harris's book, and I haven't read it, so I should put that on my list.
Oh, it's actually his. So he's got a number of books, but what I was referring to, he's got a not a podcast. He's got a podcast called Waking Up, but he's also released a meditation app called by the same name, Waking Up, and there's a lesson in there, and I think it's just called The Lesson on Death.
Neat. I'll look into that one for sure.
Perfect. Well, look, this has been great, Sarah. Where can people go if they want to be finding out more information about you?
Yeah, they can find me at Jen's website, so theeatingdisordercenter.com, and I've got an about page there, and that's where they can, if they want to, I do like free consults if anyone wants to get in touch with me or just email me. All my contact info is on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on the show and for this conversation. It was great getting a chance to chat with you.
Thanks so much, Chris. Yeah, it was awesome talking to you.
Thanks for listening to Real Health Radio. If you are interested in more details, you can find them at the 7 Health website. That's www.7health.com.